day. The huge, heavy, ungainly elk or moose deer trotted away from the travelers with speed equal to that of a mustang. Elks seldom gallop. Their best speed is attained at the trot. Bears, too, black and brown and grizzly, roamed about everywhere. So numerous were all these creatures that on one occasion the hunters of the party brought in 6 wild horses, 3 bears, 4 elks, and 30 red deer, having shot them all at a short distance ahead of the main body, and almost without diverging from the line of march. And this was a matter of everyday occurrence, as it had need to be, considering the number of mouths that had to be filled. The feathered tribes were not less numerous. Chief among these were eagles and vultures of uncommon size, and wild goose, wild duck, and the majestic swan. In the midst of such profusion the trappers spent a happy time of it, when not molested by the savages, but they frequently lost a horse or two in consequence of the expertness of these thievish fellows. They often wandered, however, for days at a time without seeing an Indian, and at such times they enjoyed to the full the luxuries with which a bountiful God had blessed these romantic regions. Dick Varley was almost wild with delight. It was his first excursion into the remote wilderness. He was young, healthy, strong, and romantic, and it is a question whether his or his dog's heart, or that of the noble wild horse he bestrode, bounded most with joy at the glorious sights and sounds and influences by which they were surrounded. It would have been perfection had it not been for the frequent annoyance and alarms caused by the Indians. Alas, alas! That we who write and read about these wondrous scenes should have to condemn our own species as the most degraded of all the works of the Creator there. Yet so it is. Man, exercising his reason and conscience in the path of love and duty which his Creator points out, is God's noblest work. But man, left to the freedom of his own fallen will, sinks morally lower than the beasts that perish. Well may every Christian wish and pray that the name and the gospel of the blessed Jesus may be sent speedily to the dark places of the earth, for you may read of and talk about, but you cannot conceive, the fiendish wickedness and cruelty which causes tearless eyes to glare and maddened hearts to burst in the lands of the heathen. While we are on this subject, let us add, and our young readers will come to know it if they are spared to see many years, that civilization alone will never improve the heart. Let history speak, and it will tell you that deeds of darkest hue have been perpetuated in so-called civilized though pagan lands. Civilization is like the polish that beautifies interior furniture, which water will wash off it be but hot enough. Christianity resembles dye, which permeates every fiber of the fabric, and which nothing can eradicate. The success of the trappers in procuring beaver here was great. In all sorts of creeks and rivers they were found. One day they came to one of the curious rivers before mentioned, which burst suddenly out of a plain, flowed on for several miles, and then disappeared into the earth as suddenly as it had risen. Even in this strange place beaver were seen. So the traps were set, and 150 were caught at the first lift. The manner in which the party proceeded was as follows. They marched in a mass in groups, or in a long line, according to the nature of the ground over which they traveled. The hunters of the party went forward a mile or two in advance, and scattered through the woods. After them came the advance guard, being the bravest and most stalwart of the men mounted on their best steeds, and with rifle in hand. Immediately behind followed the women and children, also mounted, and the pack horses with the goods and camp equipage. Another band of trappers formed the rear guard to this imposing cavalcade. There was no strict regimental order kept, but the people soon came to adopt the arrangements that were the most convenient for all parties, and at length fell naturally into their places in the line of march. Joe Blunt usually was the foremost, and always the most successful of the hunters. He was, therefore, seldom seen on the march except at the hour of starting, And at night, when he came back leading his horse, which always groaned under its heavy load of meat, Henry, being a hearty, jovial soul, and fond of society, usually kept with the main body. As for Dick, he was everywhere at once, at least as much so as it was possible for human nature to be. His horse never wearied; it seemed to delight in going at full speed. No other horse in the troop could come near Charlie, and Dick indulged him by appearing now at the front, now at the rear, anon in the center, and frequently nowhere, having gone off with Crusoe like a flash of lightning after a buffalo or deer. Dick soon proved himself to be the best hunter of the party, and it was not long before he fulfilled his promise to Crusoe, and decorated his neck with a collar of grizzly bear claws. Well, when the trappers came to a river where there were signs of a beaver, they called a halt, and proceeded to select a safe and convenient spot, near wood and water, for the camp. Here the property of the band was securely piled in such a manner as to form a breastwork or slight fortification, and here Walter Cameron established headquarters. This was always the post of danger, being exposed to sudden attack by prowling savages, who often dogged the footsteps of the party in their journeyings to see what they could steal. But Cameron was an old hand, and they found it difficult to escape his vigilant eye. From this point all the trappers were sent forth in small parties every morning in various directions, some on foot and some on horseback, according to the distances they had to go. But they never went any further than 20 miles, as they had to return to camp every evening. Each trapper had 10 steel traps allowed him. These he set every night and visited every morning, sometimes oftener, when practicable, selecting a spot in the stream where many trees had been cut down by beavers for the purpose of damming up the water. In some places as many as 50 tree stumps were seen in one spot, within the compass of half an acre, all cut through at about 18 inches from the root. We may remark, in passing, that the beaver is very much like a gigantic water rat, with this marked difference, that its tail is very broad and flat like a paddle. The said tail is a greatly esteemed article of food, as, indeed, is the whole body at certain seasons of the year. The beaver's forelegs are very small and short, and it uses its paws as hands to convey food to its mouth, sitting the while in an erect position on its hind legs and tail. Its fur is a dense coat of grayish colored down, concealed by long coarse hair, which lies smooth, and is of a bright chestnut color. Its teeth and jaws are of enormous power. With them it can cut through the branch of a tree as thick as a walking stick at one snap, and, as we have said, it gnaws through thick trees themselves. As soon as a tree falls, the beavers set to work industriously to lop off the branches, which, as well as the smaller trunks, they cut into lengths according to their weight and thickness. These are then dragged by the main force to the water side, launched, and floated to their destination. Beavers build their houses or lodges under the banks of rivers and lakes, and always select those of such depth of water that there is no danger of their being frozen to the bottom. When such cannot be found, and they are compelled to build in small rivulets of insufficient depth, these clever little creatures dam up the waters until they are deep enough. The banks thrown up by them across rivulets for this purpose are of great strength, and would do credit to human engineers. Their lodges are built of sticks, muds, and stones, which form a compact mass. This freezes solid in the winter, and defies the assaults of that housebreaker, the wolverine, an animal which is the beaver's implacable foe. From this lodge, which is capable of holding 4 old and 6 or 8 young ones, a communication is maintained with the water below the ice, so that, should the wolverine succeed in breaking up the lodge, he finds the family not at home, they having made good their retreat by the back door. When man acts the part of the housebreaker, however, he cunningly shuts the back door first, by driving stakes through the ice, and thus stopping the passage. Then he enters, and, we almost regret to say, finds the family at home. We regret it because the beaver is a gentle, peaceable, affectionate, hairy little creature, towards which one feels an irresistible tenderness. But to return from this long digression. Our trappers having selected their several localities